It wasn't just another film, Smokey and the Bandit.
The 1970s were a cultural roller coaster. It was an unexpected movie office hit thanks to its fast vehicles, humorous one-liners, and the enduring chemistry between Burt Reynolds and Sally Field.
However, even legends make mistakes.
There were amusing bloopers that somehow made it into the final edit in between the chase scenes and the roaring motors.
Some fans never spotted them at all, while others did so years later. There is more to this than first meets the eye, including consistency issues and missing props.
Come along as we examine the film, its actors, and the scenes that the editors missed in greater detail. The film that pushed the boundaries of history.
It's not simply another action comedy, Smokey and the Bandit.
It was one of the biggest successes of its era when it was released in 1977. Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, Jackie Gleason, Pat McCormick, Paul Williams, Mike Henry, and Jerry Reed were among the movie's stars.
Charm, humor, and anarchy were all expertly blended by the cast.
The plot revolved around Reynolds' character Bo Bandit Darville and Reed's character Cletus Snowman Snow. They were on a perilous expedition together as truck drivers
to sneak 400 cases of Coors beer into Atlanta from Texarkana.
Since Coors wasn't sold east of Texas at the time, this was against the law. Bandit diverted the attention of the police in his gleaming black 1977 Pontiac Trans Am as Snowman operated the truck loaded with beer.
Their scheme? As long as the beer arrived home safely, keep the police occupied.
However, when Bandit picked up Sally Field's character Carrie, a runaway bride, things took a crazy turn. Sheriff Buford T. Justice, a boisterous and humorous lawman portrayed by Jackie Gleason, targeted Bandit when she escaped. The ensuing vehicle pursuit, which was filled with collisions, near misses, and comedic timing, was among the most entertaining in film history. There was more to the movie than smuggling beer and flashy vehicles.
It was all about having a good time, being free, and rebelling.
Considering its modest $4.3 million budget, it was a huge hit at the box office, earning $127 million. After Star Wars, it became the second highest grossing film of 1977.
That is a serious matter. This success continued after that. With follow-ups and other pop cultural allusions, it launched an entire Smokey and the Bandit franchise. However, how did a film about beer and truckers become so popular? The film's backstory is equally as captivating as the movie itself.
A dream come true for a stuntman.
Hal Needham, the film's creator, was not your average Hollywood filmmaker.
Actually, he directed Smokey and the Bandit for the first time.
He was one of the top stuntmen in the industry prior to that.
He had envisioned making a movie out of his crazy escapades and passion for the open road.
His initial plan was to make it a low-budget B-movie.
Something basic but enjoyable, about $1 million.
Convincing studios to cast Jerry Reed as the Bandit was a difficult task.
Most producers didn't think Needham could direct a successful film, they thought he was just a stuntman. That changed when the script was reviewed by Burt Reynolds, who was then the biggest movie star in the world.
Reynolds, Needham's friend, decided to do it despite telling him it was the worst script he had ever read.
Everything changed with just one choice. Studios suddenly took the project seriously after Reynolds joined the team. Needham was given the opportunity to establish himself when Jerry Reed changed his role to that of a snowman. But Universal Studios treated him badly. The budget was reduced by $1 million just 2 days prior to the start of production. After Needham paid Reynolds his $1 million salary, he had only $3.3 million remaining.
Nevertheless, Needham and his assistant director David Hamburger persevered and rescheduled the production for 30 hours in a row. That perseverance paid off. They produced one of the decade's most memorable movies in spite of the limited budget. The magic behind the characters in cast Smokey and the Bandit's characters were so humorous and lifelike that they became unforgettable. The chemistry between the actors was largely responsible for that.
Sheriff Buford T. Justice was portrayed by Jackie Gleason, who added his own unique flavor to the part. In fact, he was allowed complete latitude to improvise and write his own lines. The sheriff was one of the most comic antagonists in film history thanks to Gleason's sharp tongue and quick wit. Many of his most well-known scenes, such as the one in which Buford encounters Bandit in a diner without realizing who he is, were actually Gleason's idea and weren't in the script. There was a backstory even behind the name Buford T. Justice. It was provided by a real Florida Highway Patrol trooper that Burt Reynolds' father, a former Riviera Beach, Florida police chief, knew. Reynolds' father also coined the sheriff's favorite term, "some bitch," which he used frequently. However, Sally Field didn't join the film until her agent persuaded her that it was the proper choice. At first, she wasn't wanted by Universal officials. Reynolds, who was already a major star, insisted on being cast even though they didn't think she was pretty enough. The two grew to be close friends, and their on-screen chemistry contributed to the film's popularity. Field subsequently claimed that a large portion of the film was improvised. The humor, the lines, the timing. It felt natural, not forced, because of that spontaneity. It was more than a movie. It was a charming and individualized ride. Music, bloopers, an enduring legacy. Smokey and the Bandit's production was a work of last-minute genius and inventiveness. Before filming, the script underwent numerous revisions. Carrie was not the original name of Sally Field's character in the early script. Her name was Kate. Kyle and Dickie were the names given to Big Enos and Little Enos. And there was no cash reward for finishing the beer run. The truck was supposed to be brand new. Furthermore, the well-known vehicle wasn't initially the same model. Later, it was transformed into the svelte 1977 Pontiac Trans Am, which is still beloved by enthusiasts today. The music then started. Eastbound and Down, the film's theme song, became an immediate hit. It was written nearly immediately by Snowman's actor, Jerry Reed. Reed became anxious when he showed it to Needham, and the director first had no reaction. Reed offered to rewrite it, but Needham famously told him, "If you change even one word or note, I'll choke you." That song went on to become one of Reed's most popular and a symbol of the film's free-spirited vibe. The costumes also played a big role. The Western-style outfits and Gleason's sheriff uniform were custom-made by Niver Western Wear of Fort Worth, Texas. They helped shape the film's bold Southern identity. The movie also came out at a perfect time, the 1970s CB radio craze. Truckers and radio lovers connected with the movie instantly. The success of Smokey and the Bandit even helped bring shows like The Dukes of Hazzard to television. Speaking of which, did you know that 3 future cast members of The Dukes of Hazzard appeared in the movie in small uncredited roles, including Ben Jones, John Schneider, and Sonny Schroer? Years later, Burt Reynolds himself returned the favor by playing Boss Hogg in the 2005 movie version of The Dukes of Hazzard. From its humble beginnings as a stuntman's dream to becoming a pop culture phenomenon, Smokey and the Bandit proved that great energy, teamwork, and a sense of humor could turn even a low-budget idea into a classic. Every chase, every blooper, and every line delivered with charm helped make it unforgettable. A movie that still makes audiences laugh, cheer, and look twice whenever the Bandit hits the road. And while fans still celebrate its wild chases and witty charm, few know how it all began. The idea for this blockbuster didn't come from a studio boardroom or a big budget pitch. It started with something much simpler and a little unexpected. How a beer problem became a movie idea. When stuntman Hal Needham was in Georgia working as Burt Reynolds' stunt double for the movie Gator in 1976, someone on set brought him a few cases of Coors beer from California. Needham put the beers in his hotel fridge, but he noticed something funny. The maid kept stealing them. That's when he remembered reading an article in Time magazine about how Coors beer was actually illegal to sell east of the Mississippi River. The reason? It wasn't pasteurized and needed to stay cold, which made it hard to ship. Coors was only sold in 11 western and southwestern states, which meant people on the East Coast couldn't get their hands on it. Needham suddenly thought bootlegging Coors would make a good plotline for a movie. And that was the lightbulb moment that sparked one of the most famous road films in Hollywood history. But when he showed his idea to his close friend and roommate, Burt Reynolds, not everyone thought it was a great plan. Why, Burt and Sally almost said no. At the time, Hal Needham was living in Burt Reynolds' pool house and had been for almost 12 years. They were good friends, but their schedules were so busy they barely saw each other. One day, Needham walked up to Reynolds with the movie script. written by hand on yellow legal pads. Reynolds read it and told him, "If you can get the money to shoot it, I'll star in it." But Reynolds' friends were horrified. According to his autobiography, they got down on their knees with tears in their eyes and begged me not to do it. They thought it was too risky and would hurt his career. But Reynolds trusted Needham and went ahead with it anyway. Sally Field, who played Carrie Frog, also had her doubts, but for a very different reason. She said, "I did Smokey and the Bandit because Sybil was coming out and everyone said, 'Whoa, the work is extraordinary, but man is Sally Field ugly.'" That comment stuck with her. When Burt Reynolds, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, personally called and asked her to join the movie, she was shocked. There was no script, she said. It was almost entirely improvised, but she decided to take the role thinking, "If I play this character that Burt is supposed to think is attractive, maybe the world will think I'm attractive too." It turned out to be a smart move. The film became a hit and their on-screen chemistry made it unforgettable. What's even more amazing is how much of the movie was made up as they went along. The actors had fun, improvised lines, and created moments that still make audiences laugh today. The cars, the chaos, and the comedy. When Needham started filming, he already had a clear picture in his head. Fast cars, crazy stunts, and lots of laughs. He saw a Pontiac Trans Am in a magazine and thought it would be the perfect car for the Bandit. He called Pontiac and asked for 6 cars to use during production. Pontiac only agreed to send 4. Needham also asked for 4 Bonnevilles for Sheriff Buford's police cars, but got only 2. By the time filming wrapped up, 3 Trans Ams were completely wrecked and the 4th one wouldn't even start. They had to push it into the final scene just to make it look like it was running. When it came time for Smokey and the Bandit 2, Needham made sure that wouldn't happen again. He asked for 10 Trans Ams and 55 Bonnevilles, and this time Pontiac didn't hesitate. But it wasn't just cars that caused problems. Just before production began, Universal Studios sent someone down to Atlanta to deliver bad news. The film's budget was being cut by $1 million. The total was supposed to be $5.3 million, but now Needham had $4.3 million to work with. Since Burt Reynolds' salary was $1 million alone, that left only $3.3 million to make the entire movie. Still, Needham pushed through, adjusting schedules and cutting corners where he could. He made every dollar count, and somehow the movie ended up looking much bigger than its budget. Originally, the script was completely different too. Bandit's last name was LaRue. Carrie's name was Kate, and the price for completing the beer run wasn't $80,000. It was a new truck. Even the Bandit's car wasn't supposed to be a Trans Am at first. It's funny how much the movie changed before it hit theaters and how all those changes made it even better. Bloopers and banter. Some of the best things about Smokey and the Bandit happened by accident. Jackie Gleason, who played Sheriff Buford T. Justice, was a genius when it came to comedy. The studio had originally wanted actor Richard Boone for the role, but Burt Reynolds said he wanted someone a little crazier. A little more dangerous and a lot funnier. So Gleason got the job and completely made it his own. The character Buford T. Justice was actually based on a real person that Reynolds' father, a Florida police chief, once knew. The real Buford used to say, "bitch" instead of "son of a bitch," and Gleason loved that. He took the phrase and made it part of his character's personality. But Gleason didn't just follow the script, he barely read it. Reynolds later said that Gleason never said a single word in the script. He made things up as he went, like the scene where toilet paper trails out of his pant leg as he leaves a barbecue joint. That moment wasn't planned. It was all Gleason. On set, he also had a funny code word. Whenever he told his assistant Mal he wanted a hamburger, it actually meant he wanted a glass of bourbon. And while the movie is full of scenes that look perfectly timed, there was one thing audiences didn't see. Burt Reynolds and Gleason were supposed to share more screen time. But after shooting their first scene together, Reynolds reportedly asked the director to cut all the others. No one ever said why. Even the music that defined the movie came together at the last minute. Jerry Reed, who played Cletus, also wrote and sang Eastbound and Down. He promised Hal Needham he'd have a song ready, but by the end of filming, he still hadn't written it. So one night he stayed up and wrote it overnight. The next morning, he played it for Needham, who sat quietly for a moment. Reed, worried, said, "If you don't like it, I can change it." Needham quickly replied, "If you change one damn note, I'll effing kill you." The song became one of Reed's biggest hits in the heart of the movie's soundtrack. Even famous director Alfred Hitchcock loved the film. His daughter Patricia revealed that every Wednesday he screened movies in his office. And the last one he ever watched was Smokey and the Bandit. It was his favorite film in his final years. Proof that even the master of suspense couldn't resist a good car chase, some laughter, and a rebel with a cause. But even a classic like Smokey and the Bandit wasn't free from errors. Mistakes on the road. One of the funniest mistakes happens when Sheriff Justice is stopped at a roadblock. A passing truck hits his open car door, knocking it off. But when the camera cuts to a wide shot, the door is suddenly back and perfectly closed. Another funny one. When a police car at the roadblock rolls off an embankment into the river, it starts as a late 60s Ford Galaxy. But when it lands at the bottom, it magically turns into a Plymouth Fury. In another scene, when Bandit is driving in the rain just before picking up Carrie, you can clearly see two people sitting in the car, even though he's supposed to be alone. And somehow, no matter how many dusty back roads the Bandit speeds down, his shiny black Trans Am never seems to get dirty. It's spotless in every next shot. There's also a moment where Sheriff Buford T. Justice crashes on a bridge and the hood of his car bends out of shape. But a few scenes later, it's mysteriously fixed. Good as new. These slip-ups might not ruin the story, but they definitely make re-watching the film a little more fun. You start to notice things you didn't before, like catching secrets hidden in plain sight, factual errors, and funny logic. Beyond car mix-ups and clean vehicles, the movie also has some factual errors that make you scratch your head. Sheriff Justice keeps saying he's in hot pursuit of the Bandit. But by law, his pursuit would end the moment he lost sight of him. And since the Bandit spends most of the movie far ahead, Buford's claim to hot pursuit doesn't really hold up. Then there's the beer problem. Snowman's trailer is said to be carrying 400 cases of Coors beer, all stacked neatly against the back doors. Anyone who's ever seen how heavy beer cases are knows that without straps or proper support, those bottles would be shattered by the time they reached Atlanta. Then there's the opening song where it says, "Bandit hit them brakes, found he had no air." That sounds dramatic, but in reality, trucks in the 1970s used triple-valve air brake systems. If a truck lost all its air, the brakes would actually lock up, not fail. Another odd detail is when Sheriff Justice sneaks up on three men at an abandoned car. Somehow they don't hear his car pull up or his footsteps, but they can clearly hear the tiny click of a cigarette lighter being closed. It's almost cartoonish. There's also a small but funny mix-up with geography. Justice keeps saying he's from Texarkana, Texas, which is in Bowie County. But the sheriff's car clearly shows a decal for Montague County, which is actually 6 counties away. Fans noticed and had a good laugh over it. These little inconsistencies might not change the movie, but they do show how filming such fast-paced action can lead to small but noticeable goofs. Goofs that weren't really goofs. Some supposed mistakes in Smokey and the Bandit aren't really errors at all once you look closer. For example, people often question how Bandit could buy a car, install a CB radio, and order custom plates all within a few hours. But it's easy to forget that the movie's timeline is built around a fast-moving story, and not every small detail is shown on screen. The race they're planning for is the next day, so it's fair to assume he had enough time to get it done. Another debated mistake is the CB channel confusion. Bandit and Snowman agree to use odd channels and switch them every time they talk. Some people wonder how everyone else, from Sheriff Justice to random truckers, could instantly find them without searching. But just because we don't see them turning dials doesn't mean it didn't happen. Then there's the moment when a police chief tells another officer that the Mulberry Bridge has been in disrepair for 6 months. Some say it's unrealistic because a police officer should already know that about his own area. But the movie makes it pretty clear that this particular officer isn't exactly the smartest one on the force. Another so-called mistake happens after Bandit drops off Carrie at the diner. He later finds her driving his Trans Am, which made fans wonder how she got the keys. The answer is simple.
She probably hot-wired the car. It might sound unlikely, but that's part of the fun and unpredictability of her character. Some fans even pointed out that Bandit could have legally transported the Coors beer if he'd just gotten a permit, but that would have ruined the whole story. The thrill came from doing it illegally. Without that risk, there'd be no chase, no drama, and no movie. These moments remind us that not every plot hole needs fixing. Some are what make the story exciting. The revealing mistakes and little details. Some goofs were less about logic and more about what ended up on camera. The Trans Am speedometer, for instance, always shows the same mileage no matter how far Bandit drives, and the ignition key always stays in the off position. When Bandit and Snowman open the warehouse door full of stacked Coors boxes, the crates look heavy and full, but when the forklift hits them, they're clearly empty, even though we hear glass breaking. Then there's the CB radio mistake. When Buford and Bandit talk over the radio, Buford isn't pressing the button to speak, and he's even talking into the wrong side of the mic. In real life, Bandit wouldn't have heard a thing. The Trans Am also switches between different wheels throughout the movie. When the boys cross the Texas state line, the car has honeycomb wheels from the 1976 model. But in other shots, they suddenly change to snowflake wheels from 1977. And during the bridge jump scene, you can actually see the ramp that was used to launch the car, a clear sign of movie magic. Another small detail is that when the police cars chase the Bandit across the same bridge, they don't fly like his car did earlier. It's clear their stunts were filmed differently. In one scene, Buford talks to Sheriff Branford over a CB radio, even though Branford is using a police radio, two systems that couldn't connect in real life, and eagle-eyed fans notice something else. When Bandit's hand is shown changing CB channels, it's clearly a stand-in. Burt Reynolds had hairy hands, and the ones shown aren't his. Just before Snowman runs over the motorcycles, one bike already has a flat tire, showing it was just a prop. And then there's an obvious car switch during the first chase. A Dodge Coronet becomes a Pontiac Lemons mid-scene. Even the sounds weren't perfect. When the truck pulls up to the diner, you can hear the deep hum of a two-stroke engine, but in the opening, it's clearly a four-stroke. And here's one that still gets fans laughing. When Buford realizes he's arrested the wrong man at the RV scene, his line, "Moose Twit," is an overdub. He actually said "Moose Twat," but it was changed for obvious reasons. The same thing happens again in part 2. Finally, when Big Enos flies his plane and sprays the crowd with orange paint, his goggles are hilariously on upside down. These details, though small, make Smokey and the Bandit even more fun to watch. Crew reflections and camera secrets. In several shots where Carrie and Bandit are driving the famous black Trans Am, the top of the camera can be clearly seen reflected in the car's shiny door. It's quick, but once you notice it, it's hard to miss. During the convoy scene when Bandit hides among the trucks, there's another surprise. As the Allied van line's truck moves aside to let the Bandit pull out, you can actually see a stunt coordinator leaning out of the passenger side window. He's signaling to the driver that it's safe to move. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, but it proves just how hands-on these stunt scenes really were. Another small goof happens when Snowman gets thrown out of a bar. As the doors swing open, someone's face appears briefly on the right-hand side, standing outside. But when the camera cuts again, that person has completely vanished. It was probably a crew member waiting to help with the stunt. There's also a strange visual moment near the end of the film. When Bandit passes Snowman on a curve and a trooper's car spins around, a faint double image of the Trans Am moves across the screen. It looks like the car is reflecting off the camera lens or maybe a piece of protective glass placed in front of it. It's not a glitch in the movie. It's just a reminder of how close the action really got to the camera. And then there's the scene with the motorcycle cop talking to Snowman. Look closely and you'll spot two large studio lights reflecting off the cop's shiny helmet and the truck's chrome air cleaner. It's one of those little behind-the-scenes moments that accidentally slipped into the movie. But that's not all, because the movie also had plenty of geographical mix-ups that make you wonder if anyone was checking the map. Geography mistakes. When it comes to directions, Smokey and the Bandit definitely took some wrong turns. In one scene, the silver-tongued devil asks Bandit if he's on Interstate 82 heading toward Fayetteville, and Bandit says yes. The problem? There is no Interstate 82 that leads to Fayetteville.
The correct route would have been US 71, a long winding mountain road that actually goes in the opposite direction, about 5 hours the wrong way. Later in the film, a helicopter pilot says, "I just picked up the Bandit eastbound on 95. That's another mix-up since Interstate 95 runs north and south along Georgia's coast, not east and west. It would have been nearly 250 miles away from where the Bandit actually was. And as if that wasn't enough, some of the Arkansas scenes were clearly filmed in Georgia during one supposed Arkansas roadblock. You can spot a Georgia state route sign in the background.
Even funnier, when Sheriff Justice is said to be waiting near the Mississippi border, the school behind him is Redden Elementary, which is in DeKalb County, Georgia, east of Atlanta.
Another shot set in Deason County, Arkansas, even shows a real estate sign for Clayton County, Georgia.
For a movie about speed and precision, the map work definitely wasn't accurate. Did you ever notice any of these goofs while watching Smokey and the Bandit? Or did they completely fly past you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.